All right, I'm here with Kyle Houchens, who gives live and online training classes on T-Splines for Rhino, and also uses T-Splines weekly in his own design studio. And so today, Kyle will be giving a beginner-paced demo that will show you the first steps of how to use T-Splines. And before that, I'll introduce the background as to why T-Splines for Rhino was created. So before T-Splines for Rhino was written, making organic forms with industrial design software was difficult. It involved significant foresight in the application of numerous fillets and blends, which made the models increasingly difficult to edit. So we designed T-Splines as a fast, fun, and mathematically robust solution for organic design, concept design, and shape exploration. So let's just talk a little bit about each of these things that T-Splines brings. First of all, T-Splines is fast. Quickly creating organic designs in other software is very hard to do, since most CAD software is simply not designed to handle organic models. So during today's demo, Kyle will move slowly, but you'll be amazed at how quickly he arrives at some impressive designs. Just one of our customers that had a similar experience mentioned that at their company, an engineer spent 4 weeks struggling on making a model more organic using other software, but they were able to get an acceptable model in T-Splines in just a couple of days, and then actually iterate on that model in real time to respond to the requests of the designer. So T-Splines is also fun. The worst thing that can happen to a designer is to have the software just sap them of their creativity or to make their designs actually worse. And T-Splines' unique tools tend to increase creativity. Again, during the demo today, you'll notice that Kyle often will be designing while he is modeling, and that's just really a fun way to work, as some of our other customers have said. So finally, T-Splines is robust mathematically. Of course, all the beautiful subtle designs you can make with T-Splines would be worthless if you couldn't share them with the rest of the CAD world. So T-Splines can be converted to mathematically watertight NURBs at the push of a button. NURBS, of course, is the technology that the rest of the CAD world uses for freeform designs. This means that T-Splines files read in downstream as IDIS or STEP files actually better than most other models. I don't think that we'll talk much about this today, but please ask us questions throughout the webinar anytime you'd like to see the T-Spline that Kyle's working on converted to NURBS. That conversion just takes a second, so we'd be happy to do it at any time. So finally, just a note about how this webinar works. If you haven't been to one of ours before, all attendees are muted to preserve the sound quality. However, we really hope you'll ask a lot of questions. This webinar in particular, we did a horrible job advertising. We probably have just a fraction of the people that are usually here. So all the questions that you want to ask, we will answer them. And you can just type them. You can answer them by typing in the box on the GoToWebinar panel on your screen. Then our staff will type back answers throughout the webinar, and we will also audibly answer, have Kyle audibly answer questions at the end of the webinar as well. So finally, to introduce Kyle, he is the owner of the Outside Digital Art and Design Consultancy and has created well over 1,000 models for the toy and entertainment industries. Kyle has used and continues to use many CAD software packages in his private practice, including T-Splines for Rhino. So with that, let me make Kyle the presenter.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Looks like we have a fairly small crowd today, so that's actually kind of cool because we should be able to answer lots of questions. I'm also happy to, if you say, well, let's try something here, try something there, we can explore that on the screen as we go. A little overview as to what I'm going to do today. Basically, I'm going to build this this golf club iron, and I'm an absolutely horrible golfer, and I'm certainly not a golf club designer, but I like the shape for a number of reasons because it has some interesting continuity issues that if we were trying to show this or build this in NURBS, there's some transitions here that would be fairly difficult to pull off at the quality level that we're showing here. And it certainly would be a situation where if you were building this in NURBS, it would have a ton of patches, a ton of fillets, a ton of blends, and trying to get this level of continuity and the smoothness in the highlights would be a fairly formidable challenge. So I want to show you basically how you can create something really quickly, and this model, which I'm going to hide my panel here, and I'm going to hide them, basically started from a single curve. And before I get started, I want to talk just really briefly about the T-Splines interface and basically what you're looking at and how things work and the relationship between the T-Splines interface and the Rhino interface. There's a couple of things that are going on here. If I open the T-Splines toolbar, also a note, I'm using the version 5 whip of Rhino. I'm also using the most recent version 3 whip of T-Spline, so I'm using a whip on a whip. If there's any stability issues, bear with me. I'm using beta software on top of beta software, so it's been really good and stable so far. But I just want to qualify that we're using some new stuff here. So
yeah, and just a word on why we asked Kyle to use the work in progress. T-Splines version 2 is what is being sold today, but version 3 is just about to go into beta, and we hope to have that commercially released within the next couple of months. So anyone that buys T-Splines today will get version 2, but they'll also get a free upgrade to version 3 when that comes out. So we just have some neat stuff in here that we wanted to share. So that's the background of that.
Okay. So basically, if we go back to the beginning, if I hide this and I shut off T-Splines, this is a standard Rhino curve. If you look at it, it's just got a fairly minimal amount of control points, and if I turn on the edit points, you'll notice that it has a fairly evenly distributed number of edit points, and there's a direct relationship between the edit points on the curve and the T-spline surface that you're going to get. If I have 1 billion edit points in a corner here, I'm going to get 1 billion T-splines patches coming off of this when I extrude this curve. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but typical modeling rules apply when you're going to start a T-splines model from a curve. If you build your curve, rebuild it, try and get your edit points down to the minimum that you can get. You'll get a cleaner model, you'll get nicer transitions, and it'll be a much easier model to deal with. So let's look a little bit at kind of how to get started here. I'm trying to approach this webinar from the fact that you guys are all new users. You've either downloaded the trial or have just purchased it and are sitting in front of a blank screen trying to figure out what in the world you're going to do with this. And I have it set up right now where I have T-Splines set up on a tab in the new tabbed interface in version 5. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tear this off and bring it out here so that it's more accessible so that you can see each one of the toolbars. And you'll notice that there's 5 buttons up here, and they've all, if I click on them, have some flyouts in them that you can go and investigate. And I'm only going to use a few tools in this particular webinar. The goal of this is to show how you can get something really simple with only a handful of tools. And then as your knowledge progresses, feel free to jump onto the tutorials page on the T-Splines website. All these webinars are recorded, and please go investigate those, dig through them, and then also feel free to contact either Matt or myself or any of the other T-Splines staff. We'll be really happy to help you get up and rolling here. But for this particular webinar, I'm only going to use about 3 or 4 tools, and I wanted to show how powerful those tools are with just a little tiny teaspoon of knowledge, how you can start getting some really great models. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to activate T-Splines within the Rhino environment, and the easiest way to do that is to just click the manipulation button here, which will bring up the Headsup Display. I can also bring up the Headsup Display with a hotkey by hitting the Control and Spacebar. If I hit Control Space, it shows up. If I hit Control Space, it goes away. So for the purpose of this, I'm a hotkey junkie. I'm gonna use them, but I will be very clear about what I'm doing, and I'll also show the button clicks to get there. So let's look at the Heads-Up Display a little bit. And if you imagine that your Rhino window now has a piece of clear glass laid on top of it, and that clear glass is T-Splines. Everything that you do when the heads-up display is on is going to be on top of that sheet of glass until you turn the heads-up display off, and then that sheet of glass is going to go away, and you're going to be back into the Rhino environment that you're used to. The two are compatible and dependent on each other, and so it's not like you're in a separate program that you're jumping in and out of or anything like that, but it's just a different mode that you're operating in, and it's important to understand the relationship between the two. So when the heads-up display, imagine that there's an overlay over the screen, and when you see this heads-up display, you're in the T-Splines environment. One of the first things that you're going to notice is if you try to use a hotkey. For example, I have hotkeys set up for my views. If I tried to change to the top view right now and I hit the T key, since I was in my heads-up display, since that overlay, that T-Splines overlay was on my screen, it's assuming that I'm wanting T-Splines hotkeys. And in this case, the T is to move the manipulator. It didn't do what I wanted it to do, so if I want to use Rhino hotkeys, I either have to jump out of the heads-up display so that goes away. Now if I hit the T key, I go to my top view, all my Rhino keys are back. If I control space and bring my heads-up display back, I'm now back into T-Splines mode, and the software is going to be assuming that any hotkeys I use are going to be T-Splines hotkeys, and those are all listed in the T-Splines options, all here. You can obviously reassign those just like you can in Rhino. It's really simple. All you do is click on it, change the letter, hit assign, and that'll change the hotkey. So if I want to use a Rhino hotkey in the T-Splines environment, I want to break through that layer for a second, go to Rhino, but I don't want to shut the T-Splines layer off. The backslash key, which is on a Windows keyboard, is located right under the backspace key, temporarily disables T-Splines hotkeys and allows you to enter Rhino hotkeys. So if I hit the backslash, I'm temporarily out of Rhino, or out of T-Splines. I hit my T key, it goes to the top view. If I want to go back to my perspective view, I have a hotkey set up for that, so I'm going to backspace, hit P, and go back there. Consequently, the other way that I can interact with Rhino commands without disabling the heads-up display is just to move my cursor to the command line, hit the T key here. If my cursor is still on the command line here, I can hit the P there, and I'm using Rhino commands. So here I'm using Rhino commands, here I'm using T-Splines commands, or anytime the heads-up display is on and the cursor's in the modeling window, it's going to assume that T-Splines commands take precedence. So that's kind of the relationship between how T-Splines and Rhino works. And when I was a new user, and to some extent I still do, I forget and I try and enter a Rhino command and it, with this up, and so I have to keep reminding myself to either shut this off, go up here, or hit the backspace key in order to access those Rhino commands. So let's look a little bit through the heads-up display here. And basically what happens is there's a couple of different modes here, and each one can be accessed by clicking through the menu picks up here. And if I pick an object, like say for instance I pick this edit point, and my manipulator is set to translate, I've got a typical triad here where if I can move X, Y, or Z, and if I click again, I'm going to get rotate. If I click again, I'm going to get scale. Again, these are typical triads that you've seen in every type of software. Or I can hide it. The other aspect of this triad is there's two-dimensional C-plane disks here. So if I want to move just in the XZ, I can click on this one, and I'm going to move only in that plane. If I want to move in the YX here, or if I want to move in the YZ here. That also works great if you're scaling. I can scale only in that direction, I can scale only in this direction, or I can scale only in that direction. To move the manipulator, we talked about that briefly when I was talking about the other thing, but it is particularly useful in the rotate manipulator. If I hit the T key, which is the hotkey for relocating the manipulator, the manipulator and the and the triad are going to disappear. Get my grid snap on. And what it'll allow me to do is to go, turn my knob on, and snap to another area, and the manipulator is going to move there. So if I hit the T key, I can snap it to a curve and move it over there. If I pick something here, anything I pick, the manipulator is going to be centered around whatever I pick. If I want to move it, I just hit the T key and move it over to there. The next thing that we're going to look at here, and this will be a little bit more clear as we go into this. In fact, let me pop up this model here because it's got the points on it that we'll use. In the mode, you'll notice the first mode is object. If I pick that, it's going to allow me to pick the entire model. If I click on it again, you'll notice that the verts on the model will show up. I can pick those individually and move them, or scale them or rotate them. The next one is edges, which allows me to pick the edges of the individual faces. The next one is the faces themselves. So depending on which aspect of the model you're working on will determine which mode you're working in order to interact with the model. The next is the multiplier, and this is basically how much transformation is going to happen. When the multiplier is set to 1, if I pick a face and move it, the model is going to move 1 to 1. So if I move, oh, I've got my display set slow. Let me change that real quick. If I move this 1 unit, the model is going to move 1 unit. If I move it 2 units, the model is going to move 2 units. And let me change my display really quick because I've got this set up to the slowest. In the options, there's a new setup. Actually, I do have that. I think I have it set to 3. Hang on. Let's change that. All right, that's better. If I change the multiplier to 2, if I click on it, you'll notice up in the command line it says enter multiplier. Let's say I just change that to 5. If I pick a face and I move it a little bit, you'll notice that it moves a lot on the screen. Just a little bit of cursor movement and I get a huge transformation. If I change the multiplier to 0.1 and I pick a face, now I have to move the cursor a lot and my transformation slows down. So this is really great when you're editing something and you have to get into some really fine detail. You can either bump the multiplier way up or bump it way down in order to get the kind of control that you want. So the next aspect here is the drag mode, and basically that allows you to set how your translations are going to work. Right now they're set to the construction plane that's set up for the scene. So I have my XYZ construction plane. I have my XYZ triad here. If I change it to view, it's now a 2-dimensional drag mode, and it updates based on the view. So if I want to move this straight out, I turn this sideways. And if I want to move it straight up, however I'm looking at it, that's going to be kind of a dynamically changing construction plane that's going to update as I rotate around the model. That's really useful for any type of sculptural stuff if you're doing faces or hands or characters or anything like that. That's super useful. The next mode is UVN, and that works off of the UV information and the normal information of the surface itself. So in this case, I can either move in the U direction, the V direction, or the normal of the surface. Again, that's really useful when you start getting into some really organic shapes. And then back to world, which is just a universal, it doesn't matter what the construction plane is, it just uses the XYZ default for the system. Soft manipulation is a feature that's just been added, and it's something that we're continuing to work on. And basically what soft manipulation allows you to do is if I pick a point and I turn soft manipulation on, you'll notice that I get a radius. And you'll notice that there's a little bit of a display change here. Where the red dots are is going to be the area of influence. And you'll notice, I don't know if you can see on this webinar or not, but the dots change color as they go. They're bright red here. they start getting a little more purple, and then they're purple out here. That is affected by the radius. If I change this radius to, say, 0.5, you'll notice that my area of influence has dropped considerably, so now my red dots are in here and it fades out more quickly. And what that allows you to do is that allows you to move an object, move a piece of the model, and all of the surrounding models are going to update with a predictable fall off. So say, for instance, you were doing a nose or an eyebrow or something like that. You wouldn't want to just pull one point and have it peak, because if I change this, if I go back and I disable this, you'll notice that as I pull that, it's only affecting that particular point. These two, to some extent, are not translating with it, whereas if I turn soft manipulation on, you'll notice that they all translate with it at a predictable fall off, which allows you to make these really gorgeous kind of sculptural shapes. So the soft radius you can either set dynamically. I can either stretch it out and say it's like that, or I can click up here in the window and I can actually specify a number of units, and then again that's updated through the display. Hotkeys, they're either enabled or disabled. If you want to use T-Splines hotkeys, make sure it's enabled. If you want to shut them off, you can disable them. You can also temporarily disable them with the backspace key or by hovering up here in the command line. And then the last thing that you want to notice here, and this is a really important little piece of information you want to keep your eyes on, is there's feedback as to what you're picking. I'm going to shut this off. If I pick a vert, it's going to say, well, there's a vertex here. If I change this to an edge and I pick an edge, it's going to say, well, there's an edge there. If I pick 3 edges, it's going to say there's 3 edges. If I change this to faces, it's going to tell me how many faces I have picked. It'll also indicate if there's a NURBS curve that's been picked. If I come in here and I drag select something, it'll say, well, I got 15 T-Splines faces and 1 curve. It'll also indicate NURBS curves, NURBS surfaces, and meshes. So that's a good piece of information to have, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we go forward. So let me shut this off, and let's get started. Again, when I was beginning this, I showed you that there's edit points on this, and there's 8 edit points on this curve. So I'm going to pick this curve, and I'm going to use the translate manipulator. And get out of that. Translate manipulator. And I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and I'm just going to drag out a face. And if you notice, if I go back to my original curve and I turn on my edit points, the edit points coincide with the patch layout. Every place there's an edit point, there's going to be a new face created. So, like I was saying before, if you have a curve that's got 600 edit points to make up this curve, you're going to get 600 little faces in here, and that is totally not the way you want to do T-Splines. You want to keep it simple, simple, simple. So let me get rid of this curve for now because I'm done with it. I'm going to hide that. Now I'm going to work on edges, and I'm going to double-click to select the whole edge ring, or I can pick one edge and hit the L key. Oh, I got my hotkeys disabled. Duh. I'm going to pick that, hit the L key, which is the edge loop hotkey, and that'll select all the way around there. And I'm going to go to my scale manipulator, and I'm going to alt drag on my scale manipulator, and I'm going to just scale in from that edge. I'm going to do it once, I'm going to do it twice, I'm going to come all the way in till that hole is basically collapsed onto itself.
I just wanted to jump in, Kyle. I mean, the introduction of kind of introducing the T-Splines, Headsup Display, and all those options, I mean, that's kind of a gradual introduction, but now that you're actually getting into this modeling, this is moving amazingly quickly. So I just wanted to make a note of how, I mean, all this. I mean, after that introduction, you've really just used one command to create this whole surface, and the rest of this will continue to kind of come together amazingly fast.
Yeah, I spent 29 minutes now blathering on about the interface, and I'm going to spend like 4 minutes making the model now. So this would have been a really short webinar if I just started modeling. So what I did here was I basically started with a curve. I extruded once, and then I scaled in, and in again, just using the Alt drag on the scale key. Now you'll notice that I have a teeny tiny little hole in here, and I'd like to knit that up. So I'm going to go to vert mode, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to just start sticking these things together. So I'm going to pick these two verts. I'm going to go to the modification palette, and I'm going to use the weld button, and you'll notice that those two verts will stick together. I'm going to do the same thing again. And now, like I said, since I'm a hotkey junkie, I'm going to weld these using a hotkey, which is the Z key, and I'm going to pick these two, hit the Z key, and they're going to stick together. I'm going to pick these two and stick those together. So I've got 4 verts left. Well, let me show you a cool trick with the weld tool. Since I'm going to use the Z key for welding, or I can use the button, if I pick this vert first, hit the Z key, and then pick this vert, notice that it jumped from here to there. If I pick this one first, hit the Z key, and pick that one, it jumps from the bottom to the top. If I pick them both and I hit the Z key, they jump and they meet in the middle. That's a cool trick, because if I'm going to pick both, I'm going to have them meet in the middle, and then I'm going to pick this one and this one. I'm going to Z key again, and I'm going to have them meet in the middle, and I've got a sealed up surface. And the way that I can tell that is if I pick this, there's only 1 vert there. If I pick this and there's 10 verts there, this is not closed up. So this face is now closed up, and the patch layout on this is decent. It's not great, but we're going to fix that a little bit as we go. For the time being, we're going to stick with that, and then I'll show you some options for how to clean that up as we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this back edge. So essentially that's the front of my club right there. And I'm going to go to this back edge, and I'm going to go to my translate manipulator. I'm going to alt drag out another face, another ring of faces there. I'm going to go to my scale manipulator. I'm going to alt drag on the center, and I'm basically going to do the same thing I did in the back just to get the transition. I'm going to get another little transition here. Now, the back of this club has a little indentation for the sole, and there's a perimeter weight around these things with kind of a thin spot in the face that allows you to get some ping off the front of that club. So I'm going to go to my scale or my translate manipulator again, and I'm going to just translate in a little bit. I'm going to translate in a little bit more, and you'll notice that I'm just starting to kind of come around that corner. I'm going to go to my scale manipulator again. I'm going to alt drag in just a little bit. That gets my transition there. I'm going to alt drag in some more. I'm going to alt drag in some more until it closes up. I'm going to zoom in here, turn on my verts, and I'm going to use my weld key, which is the Z. I'm going to pick those two. Doesn't really matter the order, just as long as you do them 2 at a time. You can't do like 6 at a time unless they're coincident on top of each other. So I'm just going to run around this thing and knit them.
So could you just show one more time where, if you're not using the hotkey, where the weld command is, Kyle, maybe in the drop-down menu?
Sure can. So I'm going to pick these two again. I'm going to go to the modification palette. I'm going to use the weld key here. Okay. There's a weld points and there's a weld edges. Use the weld points for this particular case. So those will jump together. And so basically, if I take a look at this model right now, if I shade this thing, you'll notice that I've got my club face and I've got my club back. And so let's get into a little bit of modification on this thing and start doing a little bit of sculpting. So this is a watertight model, by the way. If I pick this thing, this is all good to go. If I were to convert this to NURBS right now, which we'll go ahead and do that. If I right-click on the Convert T-Spline button and click this, I get a NURBS model. And if I hide this for a second and run a show naked edges. No naked edges, no non-manifold edges. This is great data. This will go to Pro-E, this will go to SolidWorks, this will go to FEA, this will go to STL, this will go to rapid prototyping. Anywhere you want it to go, it'll go. This is really great, really clean data. So if I undo that, I go back to my T-Spline surface. And the next thing I want to do is I want to get a little bit of shape to this thing. So I'm going to bring up my display again using the control spacebar. I'm going to go to faces because I want to do kind of some gross manipulations here. I want to modify a fairly decent sized chunk here. I'm going to get the translate manipulator, which I can get by clicking through the manipulator, or the hotkeys for the manipulators are at the top of your keyboard, the Q, W, E, R, and then the T key is the relocate. Q is hide, W is translate, the E and the R are the rotate and scale. And I'm going to just drag this out a little bit, and you notice that that updates really nicely, and I'm starting to get some kind of cool shapes in here. Now, this is kind of a linear curve right here, and this is one of the things that I love best about T-Splines is I can evaluate this as a designer on the way. Obviously, if I was an engineer engineering a golf club, there'd be all sorts of stuff I'd have to figure out as far as weights and all that stuff. But for this particular demo, we're just making it look cool. So I'm going to go to edges now, and I'm going to pick these two edges, and I'm going to just bring this in just a hair so that I get a little bit more of a curve. Change that highlight a little bit. You'll notice one of the cool things that happens as I'm doing this is you can actually watch the highlights update dynamically. And so you can design, if you're a highlight nerd like I am, you can design with highlights and get them to track how you want, kind of in a dynamic fashion. And I've peeled that under a little bit, and that's probably not cool. I'm going to probably have engineers hating me for that. So I'm going to grab these edges here. I'm going to use my C-plane disc because I only want to move in the Y, Z plane, and I can just untie that by dragging it in. And that's a little fat, so maybe I want to take a little weight out of that, so I can push that in. And maybe I'll pull this out just a hair. I always run the risk of getting lost in the design here while I'm doing it because it's fun. But
do you want to increase your display mesh settings, Kyle, just to kind of smooth out those facets?
Sure. And there's a cool new display setting in when you install the latest version of T-Splines called TSshiny, and it has this great highlight reflection in it. You can go into the display menu within Rhino, and under Appearances, Advanced Settings, TSshiny. If you want to customize it even further, you can turn on some shadows and some other things like that if you want it, as you can with any of the other display methods. But that's there. I have a very similar one set up for rendered shadows, and so you can see what it looks like with shadows, stuff like that. So you're seeing this is starting to take some shape, and I can now come in at the vert level and start manipulating this even further. Maybe that highlight is transitioning a little hard. I can pull this in or out like that.
So Kyle, I think to this point you've used, I think, what, 2 or 3 commands? The extrude command and the weld points command. Is that basically what you've done?
Yes, and one of the things that I like best about T-Splines is it allows me to indulge my extraordinarily lazy nature, and I can only use 2 or 3 tools, and I can get something that's really, really cool. So, yeah, basically we've used weld, we've used alt drag on the translate, and alt drag on the scale command. And we're going to do a few more translations here. I'm going to just add a little bit of fat to the bottom of this thing because it's a little thin down here by the heel.
So I'm just curious to hear from the attendees if they have any questions on kind of this workflow, or maybe some of you have watched other webinars and you have questions about using some of the T-Splines tools. Um, Feel free to ask or chime in any of those questions just by typing them in on the in that panel and go to webinar. This is really, I mean, this is a pretty basic exercise, but I guess the most important part of T-Splines that you're using here, Kyle, is just the ability to push and pull anywhere on the surface and shape it while you're
Yeah,
designing.
and basically I just wanted to show that you can start with something as simple as a single curve and get a fairly complicated model. The next aspect of this that I'm gonna pull off is the shaft. And basically what I'm going to do here is I'll use a different tool just so that we start using more tools. I can either Alt-drag on this face and extrude a face out, or I can just hit the extrude button. And what it's going to do is it's going to give me a face. I'm going to drag that out a little bit. I'm going to hit the extrude button again. And I'm going to hit it one more time. And I'll explain a little bit about how transitions work here. Basically, what you want to do is think about your transitions like you would a NURBS curve. And for a second, I'm going to shut off T-Splines and just yammer at you for a second about transitions. If I make a NURBS curve and I want to make a corner in a NURBS curve, I have to pick a point, a point, a point, and a point. And if I turn these control points on, you'll notice that I have this section, I have this section, and this section. If I were to make that same curve with T-Splines and drag a shape off of that, if I wanted to make that kind of transition, I'd need a face. I'd need another face here, I'd need another face here, and another face here. And if you look at this model, that's essentially what we have. I have a face here. If I go to box mode by hitting either the let's see, where's the box mode? That's the only problem with using hotkeys is I get lost.
I think it's in the manipulation, Kyle.
Is it in manipulation? All right, there we go. So if I switch this to box mode, you'll notice I've got a face here, a face here, a face here, and then another one back here. And basically what these faces represent is the same thing as these control vertices. The T-Splines is interpolating through these points in order to give you smooth shapes. So if I switch back to smooth mode by going to the manipulator button here and turn on my verts, you'll notice that I have, verts here that would be representative of the edit points on this curve. So let's look a little bit at the shaft here. We just pulled this out, and so I wanted to have a nice smooth transition through here. So if you think about this as a NURBS curve kind of mentality, you'd have a point here, a point here, a point here, and a point here, and you get a nice transition. If I just had a point here, a point here, and a point here, I would get a little bit of a bending shape, but I wouldn't get this nice transition. So think about that as you're building. Kind of make sure that you have enough faces that you get these transitions, but not so many that your model starts getting crazy. So I've got this situation set up here, and I've got a nice rounded capped end, but that's not really what I want. I want this to be flat with a hole that I could put a carbon shaft in or something like that. So I'm going to pick this face. I'm just going to pick it and delete it. And when I delete it, you'll notice that the face disappears, the model opens up, and since it's not connected to anything, this is just going to be a hard edge. I can utilize that hard edge if I go to edge mode, double click, or click one and hit the L key, and I can go to my scale manipulator and I can scale in a little bit more, and then go to my translate manipulator, Alt drag on this, I'll drag again. And you can see I can just drop the inside surface of that in there. And then to close it up, I'm going to do the same thing that I did to the face. I'm going to go to scale. I'm going to alt drag in 1 to get my transition. 2 just to have a little bit of meat in there. And then 3, I'm going to just pull that in and close it up. And then I'm going to go through the same process I did before, which is just to weld this up real quick. So if I pick a single vert, hit the Z key, 2 verts, hit the Z key, and then I can either leave it as it is, but I'm going to put this singularity in it for now, which is not a, usually singularities in NURBS modeling are a no-no, but T-Splines is actually cool like that. So now this club is essentially done, and you know, I mean, obviously it's not something that you could play with because the offset's all crazy and stuff like that, but if I wanted to change the loft on this thing, I could pick these faces I can change, go to the rotate manipulator, I can change where the manipulator goes from, and I can just change it from a 3-iron to a 9-iron. By just changing the angle of the face. Now, let's talk a little bit about the topology on here. I'm going to put that back. This topology is just fine, this radial topology. If you want to get really picky, you can fix this, and so that we're using a few more tools, I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to pick these faces and delete them, and when I delete them, it's going to switch to box mode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bridge this face. Where's my bridge tool? Come on. There we go. I'm going to bridge using the bridge tool. I'm going to use the selection mode set to edges. I'm going to pick these 2 edges and these 2 edges. Right click to accept, and I'm going to change the segments to 2. Because I have 2 faces here, so I want one face and then another face. I'm going to do that. And you'll notice that I have a gap now. That's a really easy thing to fix. I'm going to pick these 2 just like we did before and weld them. Pick these 2 and weld them. Go back to smooth mode by either hitting the tab key or going to the toggle smooth button. And you notice that the topology on my face has changed. Maybe better depending on your application. If you need a face layout more like this, if you needed to add some linear ribs or something like this, this might be a better patch structure. Either one will work, but that's a different way to do it. Also show you how to kind of change the topology on something if you need to go from a radial topology to a more linear setup.
So oh, I'm sorry, we got a few questions, but go ahead and finish up.
Okay. The last thing I wanted to do was just use the make uniform command, which is if I right-click on this this button here, and what it does is it's just going to go in, and if I've made some big modifications or taken stuff out and added stuff in or extruded or done anything like that, it goes back and resets the weight of all the verts back to 1, and it allows the model to kind of flow a little bit nicer. And sometimes if you've got some crazy isoparams or something like that that are really bent out of shape, it'll straighten those back out and clean it up. So the other cool thing about this model, since it is watertight, all the analysis tools work here, the mass properties. So if I want the volume of this, I can pick it, and it's going to tell me how many cubic inches this is. If I know what the weight of my material is, I can figure out what my shot weight is. And in something like a golf club, where the swing weight's critical, I can take a volumetric calculation. If I needed this to be 1.35 and it's 1.32, then you know what? Maybe all I need to do is add a little fat right here, rerun the calculation, 3, 3, I'm going in the right direction. I'd need to do that a couple of times in order to get it to where I was. But I can basically absolutely positively nail a specific part weight or shot weight if I need for an object just by using the Rhino mass properties with a T-Splines object. So Matt, I interrupted you there. What were you going to say?
Oh, sure. Yeah, just a couple questions. Let's start out with one where with the shaft hole, if you can make a transition from the T-Splines organic form to like a perfect circle or something.
Yes. And the way that I could do that is, in this particular instance, what I would do is I would draw a circle, and let's just go ahead and do that.
And while Kyle's doing this, I'll just make one comment. I hope what you'll use is what we call the match command. Is that what you're going to use, Kyle?
I was going to use the match command, or I was just going to extrude a circle down and then hook into it. But,
yeah.
Let's do both. You got 10 minutes still.
Yeah. This command that we call TS match, or the match command, is something that we actually just barely completely rewrote to make it a more robust command. But what it will let you do is match any border T-Splines edge with a NURBS curve, a NURBS surface, a trim NURBS to really aid in getting those transitions from the organic T-Splines geometry to something more exact. So yeah, so I'm interested to see how it works in this instance. But
okay. Uh-oh, I may have killed it. I tell you what, nobody wants to sit and watch the clock spin. Let me just kill this. And we'll go back.
another question, just kind of as this is coming up, Kyle. I think Juan answered this through kind of typing an answer back, but if you could just show a few different ways to align vertices and points to a plane or to other things in your model.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Let's do this one first, and I'm going to bring this up, and we'll go to faces. This opened in box mode, which is fine. I'm going to delete the faces here, get rid of those, and then I'll switch to smooth mode using the tab key. So my model's back open again, and I'm going to assume that, in fact, let me get rid of one more row of faces here. I'll get rid of these. So let's assume that I need to match this to a NURBS object. I can do a couple of things. I can take a curve, and let me just do this in NURBS real quick, just a standard Rhino curve. All right. Just going to do this, and I'm going to check my edit points. I've got a whole bunch of edit points here. Actually, no, I'm sorry, those are control vertices. If I turn on the edit points, you'll notice I've got a lot of edit points in here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 edit points, and I've got basically 4 faces here. That's all right because it's a multiple. What I don't want is 9 edit points and 4 faces here. You want them to be divisible by each other in order to be able to hook it up. So let's go here. Let me use the T-Splines translator. Move that there. I'm going to rotate this. And I can do a couple of things here. The first thing I could do is I could just alt drag this, and it's going to give me a nice round T-Splines, perfectly round T-Splines object. And in that case, all I would need to do would be to bridge between this one using the edges and this one. Oh, it's got 9 in it. Why does it have 9? All right, let's fix that. All right, I'm going to rebuild this using the T-Spline or using the Rhino rebuild. It's got 9. It's got 9. I need 8. I'm going to change this to 8. Say OK. Now if I do this, bring that out. Now I've got 8 edges. The bridge will work now. I'm going to use just one segment to go between the two. Wondering if there's an issue with the latest Rhino whip. I've noticed that it was really pokey when I first installed it. Yeah, it's misbehaving.
Yeah, just kind of some background about what this command does. This is a bridge command, and it actually is going to create a single T-spline surface from those two separate pieces. And so the effect that will have, and yeah, it looks like it's spinning its wheels, is it will actually create a single surface. And so the control, or the golf club head will be influenced, like everything will influence each other. And so sometimes that's what you want, is you want to have a nice blend where the different parts of the surface are influencing each other. There's other ways to do that by just using some Rhino commands like the blend command, using the T-Splines command like the match command, that will kind of keep those as two separate surfaces, and then that will have the nice effect that it won't change either it won't change one of the surfaces. So just depending on whether you want to have, whether it's more important for you to have an aesthetic blend, or to have or to maintain one part of that to be exact, you can use the different situations. Let's just go ahead and show maybe let's just maybe try the Rhino blend command, Kyle, just to kind of show that works, and then we can take another look and see if those T-Splines commands that are kind of still in that work in progress stage for this version will work for us.
All right. So if I just take this object and I were to use the Rhino extrude, I just get a Rhino object. If I bring this up, you can say it's showing it as an extrusion, and I just want to make sure this is, yeah, okay. In version 5, there's a new object called an extrusion, and they've been causing some issues. That might have been what the problem was before. If you explode them, it turns them back into surfaces. So this is just a NURB surface, and I can use the Rhino blend surface to go from here. If I pick from here.
Just see if your T-Splines is in compatible mode, Kyle. If you click on the utility or the options.
That would be why it's not.
If you click on display, and then,
there we go.
Yeah, so by changing it to compatible, what that's doing is it's actually displaying as a NURB surface. So that way it needs to be in that mode in order to run these Rhino NURBS commands.
Got it. And you see, it just builds a blend surface between there. This is a NURB surface. This is a NURB surface. This still stays T-Splines. So the other way to do that would be to use the match command in T-Splines, which if I run ts match, no.
This is what I'm excited to see how this works, because we're still ironing out some of the last little bits of this. So let's give this a shot. So have you used this in the UI yet, Kyle?
I have
Go
not.
ahead and click the Modify Start Points, and then there you go. And you can just click on there and then click up there to see where it should go to.
Ah.
And then you can add different alignment points. So if you have a really complicated match, you can add additional points that should match up to each other. This looks decent, actually.
Yeah.
Then you can specify the continuity, or just go ahead and do it. So it looks like that was a G0 continuity, and you can also do it G1 or G2.
Yeah, so let's redo that. That's cool.
But yeah, but what this will do is it actually will move the one surface up to the next one, and so again, it's just a slightly different effect than the blend surface in that it creates a more gradual thing. Yeah, so to answer that question, Kevin, yeah, you can blend from Rhino surfaces to T-Splines with the Rhino surfaces, and that's one of the strengths of T-Splines is that it is a mathematically smooth surface like NURBS. And so in other programs, you should be able to do that same thing, pick T-Splines edges. So for instance, like in SolidWorks, pick the T-Splines edges, and if you have that type of command in SolidWorks, be able to blend into other SolidWorks surfaces as well. Let's see.
Didn't like that. Okay, modify start points. There we go. Got it set to G1. And there we go.
Okay.
Shade that. That's so much nicer than the old tool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yep.
So you notice that we're matching to a NURBS. This is still a NURBS object. This is still a T-Splines object. And we've got a really nice blend in between there. You can add segments in there too if you needed more control on that. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds here.
Okay. Well, we're coming up on an hour. So if there's any other questions, go ahead and type them in now. But we'd just like to thank all of you for coming today. And let's see. Here's a question about whether someone would be interested to see this file to see how it can be imported to SolidWorks. Is this a proprietary file, Kyle, or?
Nope. Nope. This is just something we made. So.
Yeah, we can share that with you.
Yeah.
And yeah, so again, thanks for coming. Again, if you are evaluating your T-Splines free trial right now, then if you buy T-Splines today, then you will be able to get the T-Splines version 2, which is the stable release today, and then you'll get a free upgrade to this version 3 that Kyle's been demoing when it's released in about 1 to 2 months. So thanks again for coming, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks.